Good afternoon, good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining this important webinar, which is basically aimed to present to you, in particular to the MSP community of the world, what we have been doing in the context of the MSP Global project. We are witnessing the growing of the marine spatial planning concept and implementation at all levels, through countries endorsing and developing their own national plans. And of course, IOC has been instrumental in providing technical guidance in these processes. We have also, I think, an international environment which is quite good in the sense that it is promoting also ocean planning in a more general sense. I just want to highlight the recommendation of a high-level panel on ocean sustainability, which were released at the end of 2020, that also call for major efforts globally for countries to advance on ocean planning and marine spatial planning in particular. So this webinar today is of course addressing the MSP practitioners, the government authorities, but also beyond that. I mean, we also know that MSP is a multi-stakeholder process. So we need also the industry and the private sector on board. We need civil society, we need the regional and international organization, and we need, of course, academia and research to really help and underpin the MSP process at country and regional level. As I mentioned, IOC has been provided support for over 15 years in promoting marine spatial planning around the world, but since 2018, and in particular the MSP Global Initiative, this support provided by the European Commission has really helped us to boost our efforts in supporting beneficiary countries. And in particular, in the context of the MSP Global project, with a focus at the regional level in the Western Mediterranean region and the Southeast Pacific region. And today we're going to hear from two of those regions of how well they have advanced and how the tools that were prepared helped to facilitate a common vision of marine spatial planning across a shared ocean basin. So our purpose today is really to share some of the good work that's been happening behind the scene, a number of technical reports, and we have, of course, the storytelling tool, which is now online on the MSP Global website. So you will hear from the people behind all of this work, the DK teams and the technical teams that helped to develop this, but also many of the local and national and regional experts who have been contributing to those tools and products. I think this is a common effort, and this needs to be recognized. We also want to highlight the role of national focal points in our projects, who were also very instrumental in helping us to identify and in compiling some of the data and information that we needed to use to develop these products. This is, of course, a challenge. We know that sharing data, especially ocean data and information, is something that is not adequate, and that sometimes mechanisms and constraints exist at the national level. But we've been able to work through this common framework of MSP Global and facilitate this exchange of data. I think this work also highlights the value of reporting, both in terms of compiling and summarizing information, particularly at the basin level, which is a very essential element when we are in the MSP process trying to establish a baseline conditions and really understand what is the capacity of ecosystem, what are characteristics of the ecosystems, and then what are the social demand on those ecosystems, and really understanding and mapping some of those uses and sometimes conflicts, because this is the reality that MSP is also hopefully a vehicle to address conflicts amongst users. So the value of some of those storytelling tools is really to communicate also in some of the key findings. And we know that MSP is a complex process, and it's very difficult to sometimes communicate the benefits and the outputs of MSP to non-technical communities. And in a sense, I believe these storytelling tools are a good way to really visualize and showcase what are some of the challenges that we have in the maritime space. So this is certainly a field that needs to continue to grow, and certainly from the IOC side, we will continue to support that. I also want to highlight that beyond the technical reports and the tools, the MSPglobal project has also been trying to really, at the policy level, get the countries to work together on acquiring this common vision of what MSP needs to look like at the regional or at the transboundary level in specific areas of the ocean, particularly in the Southeast Pacific and the Med. So in this work, I want to highlight that we developed also regional recommendations on marine spatial planning and sustainable blue economy for each of the 2 pilot sites. And those hopefully will provide a platform for further collaboration in the future and really advancing the MSP agenda in each of those regions. And of course, this goes beyond the life of the MSPglobal project. So in this work, certainly we would like this to inspire other regions to engage in transboundary dialogue and marine spatial planning, and also improve communication on marine spatial planning. And certainly this is something that we will continue to do as part of our mandate, as part of our institutional mandate. But it's also very important that we understand the needs, because this is very much a bottom-up process. And we need to hear from countries on their specific intentions to move forward so that we can support those at the right level. All of this work that I've described is being done in the context of the MSP roadmap that was launched together by IOC and the European Commission back in 2017. We're now coming to the end of that first cycle. And certainly we will continue that collaboration, particularly with our European partners, to advance and promote MSP globally. And in 2022, we have intention to relaunch a second cycle of a roadmap to really guide all our efforts globally, and also to help countries to achieve their objectives as framed under the Agenda 2030. So that's all I wanted to say to you today. I hope you find this webinar fruitful and informative, and I leave you in the good hands of the project team and all the experts behind the work. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are right now. Thanks a lot, Aya, for the introduction. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot for the invitation to participate in this very interesting event, I think. And I will make a very short presentation. If you can go to the next slide, please, Aya. So first of all, I will explain basically who we are, who is RAMBI, what we do at RAMBI. And then the idea will be to explain a little bit what is storytelling, what is this about, and in particular, what are the storytelling tools, and the benefits as well of using this type of approach. And of course, then we will focus more on the challenges and opportunities that we found by developing the MSPglobal storytelling tools in particular. And then we will finally, we will go through the list of lessons learned, okay, as a result of this project. Next, please. RAMBI is a small consultancy company. We are based in the south of Spain, here in Malaga. And we are mainly working on these topics that you see on the screen, is data science and visualization. In our projects, we are using different technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence technologies, mainly for data analysis, spatial data analysis, in order to support policy making on different aspects, on environmental, but also on socioeconomic monitoring. If you can go to the next slide, please. Over the last 5 years, almost 6 years now and a half, we have been helping different organizations at national and international level. You can see here in the screen some of the organizations that we work with, in particular the ESPON program from the European Commission, where we develop tools for data visualization purposes, but also for data analysis, cloud computing, and calculation of different spatial indicators, socioeconomic indicators. Also for the ECMWF for the European Center for Medium Weather Range Forecast, which is in charge of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, where we develop a similar tool with a similar approach, storytelling as well. We develop a machine learning model to understand how climate change is affecting migratory birds, just to give you an idea of flavor of the type of work that we are doing. We work also for the Environmental Protection Agency in Ireland, the GRC from the European Commission. We participate in Horizon 2020. And of course, also we collaborate with UNESCO IOC. And we are mainly helping these organizations to get insights, from the data that they manage, the data that they collect, with their analysis, and at the end of the day, also to tell stories with their data, to build these type of tools that we will talk about today. Next, please. So first of all, let's start about the concept, the idea of what is a storytelling, or what is a storytelling tool. Please, next. So I will start with this definition. I really like the definition from the National Storytelling Network, which says that storytelling is the interactive art of using words and actions to reveal the elements and images of a story while encouraging the listener's imagination. So I think that the storytelling is pretty much about communicating and disseminating results, but making also people to feel and somehow emotional, to get attached, engaged with the message that you want to convey as a result of your project, as a result of your technical report, scientific publication. So it's a very, very powerful tool. If you can go to the next one. So to summarize the benefits as we see it in RAMBI of storytelling is that you can turn complex concepts into simple and readable ones, okay? And it's also a very powerful tool in terms of communicating scientific or technical messages that are quite complex, such as marine spatial planning, which is also complex thing. And as you can see in the screen, this is only an example of the work that we did for the Copernicus Climate Change Service, for instance. It's a data visualization tool that we developed last year, as the one that I mentioned before, migratory birds. And actually, on the left of your screen, you can see the vegetation map, okay, for the African and the European continent. And you can see over the course of the year how the vegetation, of course, is changing and how birds are migrating, looking for food, looking for resources. And you can see underneath some of the comments from the experts, in this case, a migratory bird expert, talking about the tool itself. So as I said before, it's kind of emotional. It's a way also to get to engage with your users, to communicate the message, to also to invite them for a call to action. So rather just than a plain kind of PDF report. So it's going a little bit beyond the state of the art in communication and dissemination. If you can go to the next one, please. So going back to the MSP global storytelling tools. I have tried here to summarize some of the challenges, okay, and opportunities as well, in case you're thinking about this type of approach for your project to communicate the results of your project or just your scientific publication and so on, because it can be easily applied to all these outcomes. If you can go to the next one, please. So as I mentioned before, 2 different technical reports have been produced in the context of the MSP Global Initiative, in particular for the Western Mediterranean pilot and for the South Pacific. So our kind of first step that we did together, of course, with in very close collaboration with UNESCO IOC, the experts involved in this report, it was try to identify the key messages and the topics covered in these 2 reports. And then, of course, to translate these messages in a clear and concise language. So this is the kind of first step that you should be looking at if you want to develop a storytelling tool. Then first the key messages and topics. And then second step that we will advise, and I think that is kind of an important step as well, is try to structure the messages, the information that you want to present. So making use of titles, taglines, and sections to build a narrative, to build an attractive narrative rather than just few paragraphs here and there. No, but it has to be easy to read also for your audience. And of course, if you really want to increase user uptake and disseminate your results, I think that something that has to be considered is the multilingual aspect of your tool. So in this particular case, in the MSP case, MSP Global, we have the tools available in 4 different languages. And I said included Arabic here because it was kind of one of the technical challenges that we face, because of course Arabic reads from right to left. So yeah, technically speaking, it's something that has to be considered, no, when developing this type of tools. Next one, please. So from the technical point of view, if you like, of developing storytelling tools, some of the big chunk of work is all about data cleaning, data formatting, and making sure that the data is ready to be integrated into the storytelling tool itself. So if you are considering developing such a tool, think about that it will consume quite some time as part of your project. From our experience from developing other type of tools, is almost like 70% of our time is dedicated to data analysis and data cleaning. And then the second aspect, or technical aspect, that you should be looking at is when you want to display and show this type of complex spatial data information, you have to think about the different zoom levels that we apply here when we develop the tool, in terms of symbology, in terms of technologies for clustering the different markers or the different locations that you see in the map. And of course, it's also pretty much about an intensive work in terms of graphical design. You have to make sure that, of course, there was already an existing MSP Global website, so everything, all the colors, all the branding has to match, no? When you think about developing an extra tool as a result of a project. So the branding and everything should be matching. And the colors, of course, when using thematic maps, should be kind of self-explanatory in a way. So that's why also the thematic expertise is also key, you know, when deciding the colors that you are going to use. Making the application responsive, I think, is nowadays mandatory because of the intensive use that we do on tablet devices, on mobile phones. And it's not always easy to adapt this type of storytelling tools and applications for mobile phones because it's such a small screen. And of course, we want to, in this particular case, we wanted to avoid this infinite scroll. So we work also hard on trying to think about different ways, not to work on the web user interface, no, as you can see in the screen, and you will be able to play around a little bit with the tool later on. So I would say that this can be of course challenging in the first place. Please, next. So some of the lessons learned, if you can click to the next one, please. Well, the most important one here is the collaboration. I think that collaboration is key for building storytelling tools. I think that the interaction, the collaboration with UNESCO, IOC was the team behind this work has been fantastic. And it's without this collaboration, it's impossible to develop such a tool. Think about all the experts, the stakeholders also behind these reports that Julian mentioned before. From our side, from Rambi's side, the graphic designer, the web developers. So you really have to count on a multidisciplinary team that is well managed, that there is a fluent communication in order to develop such a tool. Another lesson learned that I would like to highlight is that prototyping. At Rambi, we believe that prototyping is key, and the continuous delivery is key for our clients. And again, in this project for the MSP Global Initiative was also very important to have kind of interactive mockups. So almost from day one, we had this discussion with IOC UNESCO about the look and feel of the user interface, how the maps will be displayed. So, and this is quite important, because otherwise, if you wait until the end and you develop the tool and then you present it, then you will encounter many problems or feedback at a very later stage, and it will be tricky not to incorporate all this feedback. So I will say that prototyping and continuous delivery is quite key here as well. And of course, there is quite an extensive debugging for this type of tools, considering that, of course, the more content you have in the storytelling, the more time you will need to make sure that there are no typos, but also from the technical point of view, that the application is fully working in different web browsers, in different devices. So that's something that has to be taken into account from day one if you are planning to develop such a tool. Next one, please. And that's all from our side. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I said, it has been a real pleasure to work on this project on behalf of RAMBI.
Very pleased to be with you here today as part of this panel, and I will be navigating with you together the key results of the Western Mediterranean pilot project. Without going very much into details, so we'll be discovering all the different components of the storytelling tool and how you might want to discover and use it. So the tool is a multilingual platform. It is available in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. And while navigating it, we'll visit the menu bars here, and we will always have a description here and a legend to the left. So for the ones that are not familiar with the MSPglobal West Mediterranean Pilot Project, it's a regional transboundary project that is implemented in 7 countries: Spain, France, Italy, Malta, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, to foster dialogue and cooperation between EU and non-EU countries in order to improve marine governance and enable the development of a sustainable blue economy in the region. So the area of the pilot project, it covers the Western Mediterranean Sea Basin from the limit of the EEZ of Italy, Malta, and Tunisia up until the Strait of Gibraltar. So the Mediterranean, let me just move. The Mediterranean Sea is one of the largest semi-enclosed seas and the second largest biodiversity hotspot in the world that provides numerous goods and services to the coastal communities living around its shore. The sea, it hosts many emblematic species and habitats of particular conservation areas, and where conservation efforts were formulated by the designation of different, like here, we can see the ecologically or biologically significant area, particularly sensitive areas in the Strait of Bonifacio, more than 1,000 MPAs, and other conservation measures that we can explore here on the tab. So in the framework of this pilot project, a regional analysis of key maritime sectors, both traditional and emerging sector, was conducted in the 7 countries following a transboundary approach. And we can visit these in picture, for example, here, the Marina of Camargue in France, which is the largest in Europe and second largest in the world, or we can go and see, for example, the aquaculture facilities in the shores of Tunisia. If now we can go and dive a little bit deeper and navigate the fishing sectors, which is a traditional activity in the Western Mediterranean that go back to ancient time, and also a major source of nutrition and employment and income for the coastal community. So here we can see the different data, for example, the regional overall trend in fisheries catches that has been decreasing since 1977, or we can go, for example, in the aquaculture here and see the national aquaculture production by country, where Spain, for example, here is taking the lead. So if we collapse this on the map, we can locate, for example, the aquaculture farm or the fishery restricted areas or suitable areas for aquaculture. We can move on to the energy sector here, where oil reserves in the Mediterranean region, they represent about 4.6% of the world reserves. And where the marine renewable energy, in the region, there is one tidal current energy farm that is already operational in the Strait of Messina in Italy. And there are a few other projects that are completed and several ones that are to be completed soon. We can also play with this and explore a little bit further. So if we go to the maritime transport and port, the Mediterranean Sea is one of the busiest seas in the world. It harvests 15% of the global shipping activities, 20% of seaborne trade, and 10% of container traffic, and more than 200 million passengers. So here, for example, if we zoom in, we can investigate the highest traffic in the Strait of Gibraltar and also the main ports of Algeciras in Spain and the Tangier port in Morocco. And here I invite you to go and read the technical reports where more data and statistics, for example, on container port traffic or passenger traffic or other data that is not available here. So as for tourism in the Western Mediterranean, it is common knowledge that the Mediterranean is the world leading tourist destination that accounts for 1/3 of the world tourists. And the sector of the tourism sector is a major player and has high contribution to the national economy. So we can here see the progressing national and overall trends in tourism arrival in the 7 countries. And here we can, for example, zoom in if we want to go and see here the data that doesn't show really. We can click on the zoom and we can just a minute. So here we can zoom a little bit further, and if we select this tool, compare data and hover, we can go to 2011, and we can see that in the sea basin in red, the total tourist arrival approximated 400,000, in France 200,000, and in Malta 2,000. We can go and click on visit access and go back to the original graph. So this is just to show how you can explore a little bit more the data that is in the storytelling tool. As for the deep sea mining in the Western Mediterranean, it is an emerging sector. And there is also munitions that is dumped on the sea basin that represent a source of concern in the region. Now, if we go to the cumulative pressures, there is the conflicts among the maritime users and between the users, and the environment has been analyzed following a regional approach and based on the compiled spatial data on maritime activities and pressure that we just visited. And we can see here high cumulative pressures that were identified along the northern shores of the sea basin with the highest concentration of overlapping activities in the Adriatic Sea, the Strait of Sicily, and the Strait of Gibraltar. I want to note here that the low cumulative pressure that is assessed on the large of the southern shores of the Western Mediterranean region, it pertains mainly to the lack of public data on existing maritime activities. So if we investigate a little bit further, the environment use conflict, the main potential conflict that was identified in the Western Mediterranean, it was between the maritime traffic and the priority areas for the conservation of cetaceans. And due to a multitude of uses, the heavy traffic and the abundance of cetaceans population in this area that we see here in red, there is injuries and collision between vessels and whales that occur and represent a cause of concern for many species. Now, we can go and explore the use conflict. And here, another conflict analysis was carried out between the maritime protected areas and the main maritime activities. The first one, for example, we can see a conflict analysis between MPAs and the maritime traffic here. And then we can see as well between the offshore oil and gas and maritime protected areas, where we can see, for example, here 2 offshore oil and gas that exist within maritime areas, and over 33 aquaculture farms that exist within MPAs in Malta. So, but there is, in the Western Mediterranean, there is not only conflict, there is also synergies, and mainly between maritime, mainly they exist in the Western Mediterranean, especially in its northern country, where combination between here the fishery, tourism, and environment, they are already established in 3 EU countries based on the results of the MUSES project that was conducted in these 4 countries. So if we move on to the scenarios for the Western Mediterranean sea basin, 3 future scenarios were developed to illustrate its future development by 2030 and to help determine the desired direction of development of the sea basin by 2030. So for the first trend scenario, we assume that the maritime activities that are already in place grow based on their past trends and future projection without any integrated planning intervention. The activities development, they followed only sectorial trends and without any consideration neither for sectors, neither for the environment. So by 2030, the Western Mediterranean sea basin will look like this, and we expect use environmental conflicts to arise, especially in the busiest area where we saw here the Northern Adriatic, Strait of Sicily, and that of the Strait of Gibraltar. So if we go to the second scenario, which is a scenario that focuses mainly on conservation, we assumed here that ecological and biological areas are effectively protected and extended, as we can see here. And the impact of the activities with the highest impact on the environment were reduced to their minimum international shipping lanes. For example, here that we saw that extended up until north, but here there is only 1 shipping lane. And also the development of new activities was based only on ecological sustainability factors, such as the development of sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. The integrated scenario, on the other hand, it projects regional development of sustainable blue economy in the Western Mediterranean. And in this scenario, we assume that an integrated planning and management of the sea basin, it was implemented, and at a transboundary level, considering that MSP was developed in each country and in a coherent way along the sea basin. So in this scenario, use environmental conflicts are expected to reduce, and synergies and cooperation between maritime sectors to enhance. For example, in the south of Sicily, where 2 collocation areas were identified, one that is taking advantage of an existing offshore oil platform to implement wind energy on the coast of Sicily, and another one for wind energy and aquaculture on the coast of Malta. I cannot zoom right now for the bandwidth, but later on you can zoom a little bit and discover them. It's yeah, here collocation areas in blue and light orange. So the development of a sustainable blue economy in the Western Mediterranean Sea, guided by an integrated cross-border management and planning, will enhance the health and economic growth of the sea, safeguard the well-being of its communities, and support the achievement of the global target of protecting 30% of the world oceans by 2030. So this storytelling tool, it aims to disseminate the main results of the MSPglobal Initiative and this pilot project in the Western Mediterranean, and it has been made possible thanks to the support of different stakeholders and data and information providers that helped its design and implementation that we can find the list of here. Thank you very much, and for everyone for your attention.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone following us today. Thank you, Aya, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here this day to showcase also the storytelling tool for the Southeast Pacific. So as you all can see, the structure, it's pretty much the same that Firdaus presented. So this tool is also available in the 4 languages. And we have the same tabs here on the top and the same structure of text, legend, and the option to zoom in and zoom out. So for those that are not familiar with the Gulf of Guayaquil, this pilot that we developed in the Southeast Pacific region. So in 2012, Ecuador and Peru declared the internal waters of the Gulf of Guayaquil as a historical bay. So for this mapping exercise, we extended the analysis a bit to include also the coastal zone, as you can see here, as it was defined by each country. So you see that it's different. In Ecuador, you have only the terrestrial scope, and in Peru, you have both terrestrial and maritime scope for the coastal zone. And we also extended to have a bit more of maritime area up to the 82 degrees meridian. Then regarding to the natural assets of the Gulf of Guayaquil, the region is well known for its mangroves and cetaceans, while other coastal and deep ecosystems also provide numerous goods and services to the coastal communities living by the coast. So as you can see here in the legend, the mangroves are here in green. So they are mainly in the Ecuadorian part, but they also cross the border, and you can find them in the Peruvian side. The cetaceans, they are spread in the whole Gulf. And you also have these deep ecosystems, the seamounts here, these triangles. And so moving to the activities and pressures. So we follow the same structure. We have some pictures to illustrate the region. Here, for example, you have sun and beach tourism in Playas de Villamil in Ecuador. Here you can see, for example, a picture from a pier in Cabo Blanco in Peru. You have many fishing boats in the skyline and also an oil and gas platform. So you really have different sectors occurring together in this region. So going sector by sector, talking about the main ones. So in relation to fisheries and aquaculture, the great biological productivity of the waters of the Gulf support both artisanal and industrial fisheries. So here, for example, this pink line is the artisanal fishing zone. If we zoom in, let's see if the zoom will work fine. You will see that it's the countries, they have different artisanal fishing zone. In Ecuador, it goes up to 8 nautical miles. In Peru, it goes up to 5 nautical miles. We were also able to spatialize some statistical data. So the colorful boats that you see, they are the number of fishing boats in the landing sites that you can find in the coast of both countries. And talking about aquaculture, coastal aquaculture, basically shrimp, it's the type of aquaculture that exists in this region. I will not go into all the details because it's I really want you to be curious and go through this too. The next sector I would like to talk about, it's about the offshore energy sector, which is in the Gulf of Guayaquil, is represented by the oil and gas industry only. You don't have renewables in this region. So here in the legend, you can see that there are oil and gas blocks in different stages, some in the evaluation phase, exploration or exploitation phase, with more concentration of activities in the Peruvian side. Here we also can see where are the telecommunication cables. So there are 3 telecommunication cables, and one it's divided in 2, connecting Ecuador and Peru. Moving to the next sector, so traffic of goods and passengers, so talking about maritime transport and ports. Of course, navigation occurs in the whole Gulf of Guayaquil, but the ports, they are located mainly in the Ecuadorian side. So here in light blue, you can see the ports of Pozorja, Guayaquil, and Puerto Bolívar. The last sector that we would like to highlight is the tourism, and the diversity of ecosystems and animals of this region stimulates the nature-based tourism. So, for example, here in pink, we have corals, and I will turn off the cetaceans to be easier to see. And where you have the corals, we also have the snorkeling and diving activities. Another ecosystem that we can associate with tourism, we have several beaches along the coastline of both countries, and we can find here the green symbol, the areas where surfing is an important tourism and leisure activity. Then moving to the multi-sectoral analysis, so talking about cumulative pressures, conflicts among the main maritime uses have been analyzed based on the spatial data compiled. So you can see here in the legend that when we overlapped the main sectors that I explained before, we were able to identify the busiest areas of the Gulf. So in red and orange, you can see where the activities are concentrated. But then let's take a look in more detail. So if we check environmental use conflicts, we can see, for example, here in red, a potential conflict between oil and gas and conservation. This is a part of a pipeline that crosses a marine protected area. So I invite you, when you check the tool, to go back to the activities and pressures and check what's happening here. Another environment use conflict, it's the aquaculture and conservation. As I mentioned before, we have the coastal aquaculture in the region, and they are exactly where we have the mangroves. So this is also a conflict in the region. About use conflicts, the paired analysis about competition for space among the maritime sectors showed, for example, this conflict in red, artisanal fisheries versus oil and gas. So these red lines are pipelines that are crossing the artisanal fishing zone that I showed you in the beginning. We also have some small red dots. These are the platforms and the wheels that are also inside of the artisanal fishing zone. Another example of use conflict, potential conflict, it's between artisanal and industrial fisheries. So in Ecuador, there are these 2 areas for industrial fisheries, specifically for shrimp, and it's inside the artisanal fishing zone. Moving to examples of synergies, because of course, not only are there conflicts in the pilot area, but also synergies. I would like to highlight here tourism and conservation, as mentioned before, the nature-based tourism, but also in Ecuador, there is an interesting approach. You have mangrove concession that it's issued to traditional fishers of the region. So it's a way to use the resources of the mangroves in a sustainable way. Then when we take a look of everything together, we can have a better idea of what are the transboundary aspects of this region. And of course, conflicts may arise due to how national decisions on one side of the border can affect the other side of the border. So here in red, for example, let me show you in the legend. Here are the oil and gas prospects. This means that these are potential areas of development of oil and gas, and you have some of these areas very close to the border. And if we check the ecosystems, we have mangroves in both sides, we have corals in both sides, we have the seamounts in both sides. So when we also have conservation objectives when developing marine special plans, it's important to take into account the connectivity between these ecosystems. So let's move to the future scenarios that we developed. They are the same three kind of scenarios that Firdaus explained for the Western Mediterranean. So this is the trend scenario by 2030. So in this case, it's expected that the same main activities that I described before, they will be the ones, the main ones in the region still. Then we do not expect new sectors in the area, but a stronger development of the current ones. So the oil and gas development that I mentioned before, it's expected that they will be developed in this region. And as you can see, they are within and outside, inside and outside of the artisanal fishing zone, for example. The second scenario, the conservationist scenario, in this case, we can see that the prospects, they would not be developed, the oil and gas prospects. But in this case, the potential protected areas, these are existing proposals, and these are areas identified as a high priority for conservation. They would be declared as protected areas. And in this case, some sectors, they could also emerge if developed in a sustainable way, such as, for example, offshore aquaculture. Then the third scenario developed, the integrated one, you can see only checking these sectors that I highlighted, that it's a bit of each of the previous scenarios. So it's expected to still have some oil and gas development, but not inside the artisanal fishing area and not inside the protected areas, the new ones that would also be established. So as conclusions, the main maritime sectors of the Gulf of Guayaquil represent traditional activities such as fisheries, maritime transportation, and offshore oil and gas. And a sustainable and coherent development of coastal and maritime activities in this region will be crucial to address rising environmental, social, and economic challenges faced by this historically shared bay. And here you can also find the different institutions in Ecuador and Peru, and also at regional level that support the development of this pilot project. So I would like to thank all the stakeholders involved, and also all those that worked in the MSPglobal team to develop this pilot project.